Goodwin, American Bible Society. We're out of Philadelphia. My colleague, Zach Hunter, he's a little shy, but there he is, right? And we're here because, well, first of all, the American Bible Society is 200 years old. For those of you who don't know us, I didn't know until I joined the team about American Bible Society. And the goal in the U.S. is to see 100 million adults engaged in the Bible. And right now there's about 50 million. So we have a way to go. And our commitment to this U.S. campaign is for the next 10 years. So it was interesting. Somebody was talking about 10-year vision, and that's exactly what we're committed to, which is quite a long time for a commitment for a campaign. Well, anyway, we're interconfessional, and we love the Catholic groups. So we're here because the campaign that we have, we recognize through a lot of research, there's about 155 million people in the U.S. that are in that movable middle. So it means that they're either neutral about the Bible or they're friendly but just not engaged. Maybe they go to church even occasionally, but they're just not really, it's not a part of the fiber of their lives, right? And so our desire is to, as I think somebody said up here, to positively influence mainstream culture's perception of the Bible and get people really engaged. And particularly right now, we're focused on that movable middle. And so we've got a hub called Look Inside, and we've actually identified the top 100 searches in Google that have the word Bible. And so we've taken those questions and we've created responses, not answers, because we want to direct people to the Bible and different content to allow them to figure out the answer for themselves, right? People don't want to hear the answer. They want to discover it, and we can walk alongside and help them do that. We also work in partnership with a lot of organizations, ministries, so that this isn't our campaign, this is a collaborative effort with a lot of other coalition partners. And so we were really excited to be invited to be a part of this. There's a large segment of movable middles that identify as Catholics, and we know that each segment has unique needs and perceptions, and so we want to make sure that we don't just kind of group everyone together, but we understand each segment. So we're excited to be here, to learn from you guys, to invite you to be in partnership with us, and let's see how we can serve you. And now I'm going to introduce Cory. And from what Cory has told me, if you have any takeaway at all from this summit, make sure it's what he tells you. It's going to be amazing. Now, I was going to just tell you a little bit about Cory, but he said no, he had a script for me. So here it is. Cory Heimann is the creative director and genius at Likable Art. A desire to stir up beauty drives his love for collaborating and creating. His favorite creations are his 3 boys, 4, 2, and 1. Yeah. And his wife, who is creating amazing artistic work on fawnly.com, FAWNLY.com, on Etsy, and it's beautiful. I was just looking at it. So I could go on and on about this amazing man, but he didn't give me any more scripts. So without further ado, Cory.
That was quite the intro that I wrote. Thank you for that. In case you're wondering, I appreciate you guys joining in on that session this morning. That was really fun. I appreciate you just kind of diving head first. I know it can be tough whenever we're working with people we haven't met or whatever else, or maybe for you, maybe you're a little more outgoing, and that was like totally awesome. It's so much better to work with people you haven't met. It makes it easier. But something that strikes me is they're talking about the Bible and bringing Catholics in, and I think a lot of times it can be easy to not get very far in the Bible. So I made it a good solid 5 words in, and those first 5 words say, in the beginning, God created. And so if we're calling ourselves Catholic creatives in here, that means that we're sharing in the very first thing that God did, or at least that God was willing to share with us of what he did. In the beginning, God created. So we're sharing in that very first thing. So that brings a ton of responsibility of that very first thing. So with the help of Meredith over here, I made this kind of rally call of artists, of creators, that I just wanted to share with you real quick, and I'll hop up and share a couple more thoughts after we just play this real quick. There's a reason why dictators remove art from the reach of the common man. Why humanity's worst criminals are sentenced to complete darkness. Why propaganda posters are hung up to replace classical paintings. It's because art speaks to man's unquenchable longing for beauty. Today we're not fighting against a power to try to suppress beauty, but we are fighting against a culture that is numb, against a system that churns out a manufactured next big thing, against mathematical formulas for musical compositions, against the cliche, the sensational, the scandalous. Beauty, it's worth fighting for, and we are in the trenches. We're not button pressers. We're not reactionaries. We're not waiting for a signal. We are artists, and we're running towards beauty with every shred of energy we have. Because we hear the call, we understand the responsibility, and we take up the mantle. We recognize brokenness, and we see beauty there too. We create because He first created. And we're inviting you to join us because we believe beauty will save the world. So whenever I was in college, I pinched all my pennies together and I bought my very first camera. And I was as broke as you can be. And I had a friend that we would go shooting together, and he saw me carrying around this camera with nothing, and he said, "Hey man, you need a camera bag. And he handed me. He's like, "I think I'm gonna buy a new one. Here's mine." And he passed me this camera bag right here that I've kept with me since then. So we'd shoot together, we'd do different films and stuff together in college, and then I graduated and ended up wandering off and accidentally tripping and falling and doing this Likable Art stuff. And he decided he was going to go over to Africa to do some documentary work over there. And so I'm up in Michigan doing my thing, and he's actually down here in Texas. He's from Texas, from San Antonio. He comes back down here. He's packing up to head out to Africa. He's got his plane. It's about to leave in about a week, and he's riding his bike to the grocery store to pick up some stuff, and his heart fails, and he passed away that day, my friend Tyler. After he passed away, I'm up in Michigan, can't even afford to come down for the funeral kind of thing, and I pull up his website, and he has something on there that I've just adopted as my own. He said, if I had a mission, it would go like this: to present Christ is irresistible to the yearning heart. And that's what I've decided to live for. Like, if this is true, if Jesus is Lord, if he came down and died for us so we can understand that and have a grasp on what our sins have done to him and to let us enter into eternal happiness and truth, then he is irresistible. And my only job is just to truly present him as the irresistible he is. This is hanging up in my office. My wife lettered that, and it's just hanging above my desk. And so that's my challenge today, is what can we do to present Christ as irresistible? Because here's the deal, guys. We in this room are the funnel that every project that the church is doing, especially everything outside of the Mass, everything outside of the Mass that the church can do is going to be funneled through you and your colleagues, right? And so what are we doing in the middle of that funnel? What can we do to take whatever that idea is that's being funneled through us and make it more irresistible, pointing to Christ as more irresistible? We have the option that whoever's running that through, we say, okay, great, and then we just push it on through, and nothing ever gets heightened. Nothing ever is pushed towards that irresistible Christ, right? We have that option, and that's something I call, like, we can be button pressers. And here's what we need done. Okay, it's done. Here it is. Or we can be artists. I find those two to be different, right? And so if we're button pressers, we have no competitive advantage over the robots that are going to steal our jobs, right? And so if you look at, like, right now there's a robot that can beat Jeopardy, but there's no robot that can create Jeopardy, right? The fact that the way that Jeopardy is set up and that you have a split second when they're about to answer the question, so us that are not so intelligent can actually come up with the answer before the people that are way more smarter than us come in with the answer. Like, that's a genius setup, right, of Jeopardy to think about that, and it's designed really well, and it works really well. So yes, there is a robot that can beat it, but it cannot make that. It doesn't have the creativity to make that. So what are we doing to push and not be that button presser, but actually be the creative type? I heard somewhere that the hardest thing to teach a robot is to fold laundry. Right? So these things that we learn as like a 5-year-old are like the hardest thing for artificial intelligence to do, because every garment is different, and like it has to figure out where the corners are and how shirts fold differently than towels and everything, you know, all these different variables. So these little tiny creative tasks is what will always set ourselves apart. And if you want job security, creativity is it, right? You won't be replaced if you're able to really truly plug in that creativity. And so then I think the question comes down to, as Catholics then, what sets us apart from maybe other artists, other creatives that are out there currently doing really great work? And so I think there's a few things. I think one is that we need to see that the Catholic Church is not blinders, right? The Catholic Church is the universal church. That means that the Catholic Church, the Catholic worldview is the widest lens to see the world. And if we forget that, we can't present Christ as irresistible. We can't relate to people. We can't see their struggle. We can't see their suffering. But whenever we see that the Catholic worldview is actually that widest lens, then we can step into the human experience. We can step into the human suffering, relate to it, and point it to the truth, point it to eternity, right? And so whenever we have that perspective of the widest lens, I believe Catholics can make the best art, right? And the deeper we can get into just being better humans, right, the better our art will become. Is just like whenever we concentrate on just diving into prayer and diving into our own quest on this journey we're in, then our art will improve with it. Okay, something else that I feel like that sets us apart is that if we intimately know this story of Christ, we intimately know the best story ever told, right? So if we're trying to be storytellers, and I mean that with whatever we're working on, I think all of these things that set us apart, it doesn't matter if you're working on something for the church or if you're working for Pixar or if you're no matter what you're diving into, it doesn't matter. Like, all these things apply, because whenever we have an understanding of the greatest story ever told, like whatever we're working on, we can actually improve it. And then the third thing that I really find that sets us apart is a deep understanding of the universal longing. So I encourage you to speak to that universal longing, and what it comes down to whenever we're talking about that is, what is it that we desire? What is our ache? What does our ache point to? What does our desire point to? What are we designed for? Like, whenever we look at ourselves, what are we designed for? And then let that point to, what is our destiny? What is our desire? What are we designed for? And what is our destiny? If you figure out those answers, your art's going to be awesome. So I guess to just kind of bring this to a practical level here, I know I know it's not easy to be pushing back on clients or whoever we're working for, so trying to make things better. It's much easier to hit the status quo. Like that will always be easier. So how do we do that without coming in with just a ton of pride? And how do we like push things to be further? And I think there's a couple of things that you can do. I think first of all is just to take personal responsibility as often as we can. And what I mean by that is like recognizing we don't have all the answers, but we also don't have to work with every single person that we have the opportunity to, or whatever else. Like I appreciate the podcast Sean West. He breaks open how there are no clients from hell. Like that's a big thing that designers will just go off on clients for hell. There is no such thing because you had to take them on as a client. They are not a client until we say yes, I will work for you. Yes, I will do it. So like that's the question. If we're doing our work right and we can understand those red flags ahead of time, and I think that goes with employers as well. If you have the talent, then like we should be looking for the employer that will harness that talent and to really push it to further. My question for anybody that we're bringing on to our team isn't necessarily how can I improve your career or how can you even pitch into Likable Art. My question is, how will this role make you be the human being you're supposed to be? You know what I mean? So I think whenever especially, I know a lot of you guys are involved in hiring and doing different things like that. If we ask that question and we can figure it out, then like they're on board because they're becoming the human being that they're called to be, right? And those better humans make better art. So I encourage you to kind of to ask yourself today and tomorrow, like, what are your personal values, right? And I say that most of us can fall in line with a lot of our values coming from this Catholic background and stuff. What we've done internally is made sure that we have our main pillars. Here's what we do and here's what we don't do. So like our major pillar is like we have to affirm the good. Like that's what we're all about. And so we have a rule that every project that we're looking into, like we look at like if we don't affirm the good first, if we don't lead with beauty, then we're not actually going to make a dent in culture or in the church or anything like that. So our rule is 80% of the time we have to be affirming the good. And that gives us the permission to critique the church. Yes, there's things wrong with the church. Yes, there's things wrong with the culture. But to earn that credibility to critique, we have to affirm 80% of the time. So if somebody comes in and be like, hey, we want you to document this pro-choice march and how horrible that they're doing, whatever it might be, we say, no, that's not what we're doing. Like, we could maybe get that across from a different direction. Maybe we can see what we can do about that. But we've got to affirm the good first because there's good things happening. And I believe in Jesus Christ, and he's good, you know? And so that's one of our main pillars. And then we have our what we call our minor pillars, right? Which is things like we don't do political work. I don't think no one should do political work. You know, that's not something I would hold this room to, but that's just one of our minor pillars. Another minor pillar is that we don't do parody, right? We just say no. Like that's not something we do. That's not something we're trying to do, and so we just turn it away. So to think about what are your values, what are those major things that are absolutes, and what are those minor things that might change in the future, and that might transition and might transform. And so a couple of things that we can do to wherever you might be, like I know it can be a big struggle in some work environments to really to be putting this forward. And so I guess a couple of things is to really dive into whoever you're working for, whether it be a client or whether it be your employer. What is that mission, and how are we furthering that mission? How are we entering into that story? And if that's not obvious, and if you're not able to get that out of your employer or out of your client, like how you're pushing that mission forward, so often people come to us and say, hey, we want a promotional video for this thing we're doing. And that's fine. That's not a terrible thing. But my question is always like, okay, but you've spent all this time on this mission. Is a promo video going to be the thing that pushes your mission forward, right? And so are we actually entering in to help you further your mission? And if the answer is no, then that's not the thing you need, right? We need to look at this from a different angle and figure out what is actually going to push that mission forward. And then also, like, I think it's our job to also look at whoever we're working for and see part of that mission is going to be financial stability, right? And so how do we, and I think we'll talk about this a little more later this weekend, but how do we plug into that ministry, plug into whoever our employer is, and how do we actually add financial benefit to them? And once we can show, hey, here's the situation, we're going to be bringing in this much more because of this project, all of a sudden the financial restrictions, they go away, you know? And so I think it's important. Whenever I was just out of college, I went to a friend's wedding, and his father, I was talking to him, I was like, what do you do? And he said, I'm a consultant. And I remember thinking, like, that's bullcrap. Like, what does that even mean? That means nothing. You know, like, that's the default answer. But at the same, what I've come to find as I'm going through this, it's a lot easier to say, like, I make videos, you know, or whatever else. But I think whatever our role is also to run in that lane of consultant. We're helping that client, not just produce work, right? We have to be consistently studying on how are we improving what they're doing, right? And so we bring an artistic eye to that mission that they're bringing to us, right? They set the goals, they show us what they're trying to accomplish, and then we're the ones that give that artistic eye to push that to the next level, financially and mission-based, right? So I'll leave you with a little story. In high school, I kind of saw the arts as the lazy man sport, kind of, and so I made sure to take 7 art classes rather than 8, because if you take 8 art classes and get A's or B's, you get a special art certificate. So I saw that art certificate as that means I'm lazy, right? And so I eventually went to Steubenville, and I studied theology and catechetics because I couldn't go study art, you know, because that would be lazy. And as I'm studying this greatest story ever told, right? I'm spending day in and day out, and I'm realizing, like, this is it. This is what I want to make, things that are beautiful that show this irresistible Jesus, right? And so I know a lot of you, most of this room is really far from that mindset. But whenever we walk outside these doors, it's a world that is consistently, when we're seeing it, right, is saying, well, the first thing to pull is the arts, right? And we can plug on the arts, but as long as we have these other things, we'll be fine, right? But if you look at the last 700 years, last 2,000 years, last 9,000 years, what are the things that last? What are the things that still inspire? And it's always art, right? It's always the things that are going to last. So whenever we're driving, just yesterday with my wife, just right before I flew out, I don't even remember what she was talking about, but she suddenly told me this story, and somebody's going to tell me that I'm wrong on this story, and that's fine, because I didn't even look it up, but I loved it so much that it ended up in here. So she was telling me about Saint Margaret of Clitheroe. And so she was like harboring priests in her house whenever that was illegal, right? And so all of a sudden she ends up in prison. She has a daughter. She ends up in prison, and she's actually going to be killed for her crimes of harboring these priests. And so right before they were taking her out to be martyred, what we call martyrdom now, you know, this woman, she left her shoes for her daughter, and she said, will you walk in my shoes? And so my question tonight is, like, what are we leaving behind for that next generation? What are we encouraging people to do? Who are we challenging? Will you walk in my shoes? Is that a good thing? Is that a good direction whenever we're challenging that next generation of people? Because I know that this room can shift a mindset of way more than 90 people, right? Everyone who's going to be coming up is going to be learning from you if you let it be you.